Hello, friends and beautiful people. It is Kathryn and 5D Visionary, Elevated Consciousness Coach. Hello, and welcome to this week's Sunday Support. Today we are focusing on and doing practice with inner child timeline healing. This is going to be a good one. I'm going to give you guys a minute to jump on here. There are a lot of people who asked to be tagged on this video. So many, in fact, that I can't sit here and spend a lot of time tagging. I don't want to cut into the time that we have to share together here, so I will tag you in this replay. Okay? Hopefully more than a few of you will be able to join us live. Let's see. Hi, Meredith. Yes, I'm excited for this one too. It's gonna be good. And I have a little bit of a disclaimer, because for some of you it might be a little too good. Okay, there I am. I can see who's here. Inner child timeline healing can be kind of intense for some people. So depending on what you would like to work on today, maybe some of you who have seen my post and preempted or readied yourself for this live, had some things in mind that you would like to clear. Because I did mention that this is going to be discussion and practice. I'm going to take you through a guided practice of inner child timeline healing. So depending on what it is that you'd like to clear, and maybe you don't even have a full idea of what that is, but you're going to be able to investigate and review some things in the space we're going to create here. You have to ask yourself right at the outset here, okay, am I ready to do this? Am I ready to clear something? Am I ready to see something that maybe I don't want to see? Am I ready to shed this layer? Because sometimes, that can be quite an upheaval. That can be highly emotionally charged for some people. So I want to ask you right off the bat if you're ready for this. If you feel like you're really not ready or in a place right now to shed something, maybe you've been shedding a lot of stuff this week, this past year, this past decade, maybe you want to shelve this for another time. So I just want to put that out there for you. That's my disclaimer. This is also what I want to say about this. That when I hold this space for you, I am fully aware of the responsibility inherent in holding this space for you here. This comes with a word of caution. When you come to lives like this and people are doing healing or even readings for you, you are inviting people into your energy, okay? So I take that very seriously. I've been doing energy work for over 20 years. I take it very, very seriously when you put yourself in my hands, and I feel like a very strong steward and custodian of your energy. And so we will always be in a protective space. You will always be grounded. You will always have the opportunity to, reach out to me if you feel like you need a little more help. Okay. Not everyone out there in Facebook land or in internet, worldwide interwebs is that responsible with your energy. Okay. So I just want to let you know I am. That is my thing. I'm very, very a staunch believer in protecting your energy and making sure that you are in a safe space when we do this kind of exploration. And today is going to be an exploration. And so if you feel you're not ready for this level of exploration, I invite you to opt out for now. There will be a replay. The replay will be on my YouTube channel. Hi, Kathryn. The replay will also be here in the Global Acceleration group. If you like this work today, if this really, perks up your ears and your God self says, ooh, I like this. I remember what this is. I remember the power of this. You may want to get in my Timelines Expanded Masterclass. This is a 12-week exploration of all things time and timelines. I'm currently teaching it now. I just taught the first module. You can join this program anytime, but I am now teaching it live. So if you like the dynamic of a live program, you may want to get in here if you like this work and you want to go further down the rabbit hole with this work with me. You can join Timelines Expanded Masterclass, okay? Hi, Brittany. Hi, Nicole. Hi, everybody who's here. Yes, so you can join that because that's the only time this year I'm going to be teaching Timelines Expanded Masterclass. That's my signature program. So hello, everyone who's here. Some of you may not want to say hi. That's okay, but I appreciate it if you do because I don't like to be lonely. No one likes to be lonely. Let's see who else is here. Emma's here. Tiffany's here. Let's see. And that's all who's saying hi. And that's okay. So, and also I wanted to say, if you like this and you want to take this further and really kind of soothe yourself, you know, maybe you'll have something in here. Hey, Lori, maybe you'll have something in here that is really, you know, maybe highly emotionally charged for you. I have a free healing in my member vault. My member vault is it's a VIP member vault. All of my paid programs, free offers, not all of them, but most of them, they're all lumped in together in this place called a member vault. And I have a Healing the Inner Child with Mother Creatrix. This is a very soothing, motherly, feminine, you know, divine feminine energy that is very soothing and really puts you back into alignment with Source in a very, very profound way. So do you guys want me to just give you that link for that? It's free. It's in my member vault. And if you haven't visited my member vault before, you should, because there's a lot of free stuff in there. You can really kind of, you know, press play and binge watch and have some fun with it. So I will put that in there. Let's see. Because it is really wonderful and you'll be really engaged and it feels very soothing and very calming and it's a total energy reset and it's really quite lovely. So let me see if I can find the link for that. Well, I'll just give you the link for the member vault and you can go in there and look at everything that I offer. How about that instead? So I'm going to put that in here. Like I said, this is a one-stop hub for all of my free and paid programs. Okay, that's my member vault. Boom. I put another post in here today that is a timeline collapsing statement. Maybe you guys saw it before you jumped on here. Check that out because we're going to refer to that. I'm also going to put it here in the comments because we're going to expand on this more. We're going to talk about this more, but this is a wonderful timeline collapsing statement that you can use today. You can use it anytime. I'm going to give you the protocols and the way to do timeline healing here so that you are ensuring that you're protecting your space and that you do the work and you ground yourself after. Don't ever do this work without grounding yourself, okay? Really, really super duper important. So here's the timeline collapsing statement that we're going to use here today. Write it down. Use it. Have fun with it. Hi, G. I got a lot of people here. So I invited my time benders and timeline healers. Those are who are members in my Timelines Expanded program. I've invited them here today to take part in this. So hopefully we'll see a lot of them here. I'm new on the page. Awesome, Emma. And it's lovely to have you. Welcome to this space. Thanks for being here. So I want to talk about today something that can be very, very powerful, a very, very powerful cleansing and healing. And it is known as inner child healing. Okay. So from the time that we're born up into about the first, sorry, I'm losing my shoe fell off. I don't want to be shoeless today. So from the time that we're born up until we're about 5, 6, maybe even 7 years old, our brains are developing. Cognitively, we're not fully there yet in being able to consciously interpret our environment. So we are basically in a theta state, which is akin to a hypnotic state. And we are just downloading information. We're downloading behaviors. We're downloading things like, this is a mom, and this is what a mom does, and this is a dad, and this is what a dad does. This is what happens when somebody gets angry. This is what happens when someone is sad. This is what people do when they're happy. We're just downloading a ton of information. And from this, we are creating a template for what becomes our worldview and our level of perception going forward. And what is really important to understand about this up until the time we're about 5, 6, 7 years old is that we are not cognitively available yet, meaning we don't have the neural circuitry yet to really be conscious and have that level of objective observer of the information that we're taking in and being able to interpret it objectively. You know, everything is a subjective experience at that point. And when you think about how much information that you can take on in the first 5, 6, 7 years of your life, it's a lot. And if also you're not in a place to consciously observe or be in that higher self vantage point of the information that you're taking in, then you're just taking it in at face value. And so we are creating a template for the rest of our life, really, for what we're taking in and taking on at this very, very young, tender age, where we're really fragile and we're forming our worldview, we're forming our beliefs, our ideas, our fears about what the world is and about the roles that people have. This is an important thing that we interpret as well. We interpret the role of the mother, we interpret the role of the father, we interpret the role of grandparents, which I'm going to talk about and give you a very vulnerable example from my life to help you understand how this can affect you in the way that you create your personal identity going forward in your life. And if it goes unchecked or it's unconscious, it can keep kind of pulling the strings in how you respond to life, to your life, to the events, the scenarios, the people, the situations in your life, okay? So from this very tender age, we can develop and bring on a lot of information about what we think the world is and what we think about who these players are, who have different roles in our life. Teachers, mentors, parents, grandparents, extended family, friends, right? And so if this is not addressed in the sense that it's brought up for investigation and review, there can be many things that are actually dictating the trajectory of our life that we're not really having any say-so in because it's so deeply a part of our unconscious or subconscious programming. Are you guys following me so far? So you can probably see how important it is to look at this stuff. And yes, it is shadow work. It's probably the most important kind of shadow work, right? So give me some hearts if you guys are following me so far, okay? So when we look at this stuff and we have this idea, or this opportunity rather, to do shadow work and to do some clearing and healing and processing of things that we just took on at face value but never really thought about, or we just gave credence to blindly, we can see how maybe there are some themes, some narratives, a running narrative in our life that maybe was formed in a way where we really had no control over. We just took it on. And we don't really have any control over it until we bring this stuff up for review and investigation, exploration. Only then do we have an opportunity to accept that this is who we are, who we've been, or this is how it got there, and then be able to make the appropriate changes to move on so that we are back in alignment with source. Because a lot of the things that, we want to investigate and review as part of inner child trauma or drama, if we want to call it that, has brought us out of alignment with source, okay? So I want to give you some examples from my own life. And I definitely had my heart caught in my throat with this one, but with a lot of shadow work that I've been doing over the last few days, maybe some of you guys have seen my posts, I decided not to keep this stuff to myself, that it was more in alignment with what I do and who I am and to practice what I preach, to bring this to you. Even though it makes me feel raw and vulnerable, I'm a Capricorn. I like to be in charge. I like to be perceived as being the one in charge. So this is hard for me. But I have a very strong spiritual team who are very vociferous and very vocal right now in calling me on my own bullshit. And in no uncertain terms did they let me know that if you really want to help people, then you're going to have to step up and show a little bit more of yourself. and give real life examples to people, because people need to hear what you have to say. There are people who are going through what you're going through and need to hear it out of the mouth of someone else, that, you know, their situation is honored and witnessed and seen, and there's a way out of it. Because that's how you're going to lead going forward. Because I'm being called up into a bigger platform. I'm being called up into a higher level of service, and I have to follow that through. I have to be vigilant with that, and it's hard. I'm not going to lie, it's hard. So here goes. So I want to give you some examples about why this came into, I mean, I'm already really deep in the world of timelines. I do a lot of timeline healing. I do a lot of work with time and timelines. That's kind of my jam. That's what I do. That's my thing. That's my zone of genius. So when this came in as a way of healing, it was not only completely appropriate and aligned with what I already do, but it brought the next step in for those who are looking for that other level of healing that brings a deeper cleansing, a much deeper purification. And so this came in because, I'll give you two examples. The first one, you know, as part of stepping up, when you're in the business of being in business for yourself, you kind of have to keep challenging yourself to explore new territory and go a little bit further, or at least I do. And a lot of the people that I surround myself with as my peers and mentors have this same mentality and mindset, that we keep going, we keep evolving, you know, to rest on our laurels and kind of marinate in where we've been. It's not only not serving us, but it's not serving those who are needing us out there in the world. And so with that, you know, as we step up and we offer more and we give more of ourselves, sure, you know, it naturally aligns with, you're charging more for your services. You're giving more of your time. You are, you know, spending more time doing research and getting your resources together so you can deliver, you know, a concise and beautiful package and product to your clients. So it's naturally aligned with charging more for your services. And here I was realizing that I was giving more and doing more research and doing my own work to bring a better product to my clients. But I had this incredible resistance about charging more. And it was really hitting me hard. And I've done a lot of mindset work. I mean, yes, I do a lot of the woo, but I do a lot of mindset work as well, because those have to be in balance, even when you have a spiritually based business. And a lot of times we think of, okay, well, our money blocks usually, and for a lot of times, and especially for women, have to do with worthiness issues, right? I mean, who has struggled here with that? I did a whole course called the Wealth Consciousness Collective, and we worked a lot with worthiness. And that is a major block and a major barrier and resistance to receiving more money. But I've done enough work around that, and I knew that that wasn't it. It wasn't unworthiness. It wasn't. And I really, really plumbed the depths of that, and, you know, pulled out all my tricks and tips and pulled out all the stops and really excavating this. I was like, so what is this then? What is this? And so I had one of those waking dreams. I don't know if you guys have those in the early morning. I do my deepest sleep, my deepest REM sleep, you know, in the morning between probably around 7 to 9:30 in the morning. I sleep late. I go to bed late, so I sleep late. And I was having this kind of waking dream, this lucid dream of remembering when I was a little girl and constantly hearing my parents argue about money. It was a constant theme. It was, you know, this old chestnut that just came up all the time over everything. My mom spent too much, my dad spent too little, and never the twain should meet. And it was always a constant source of ire and anger and a lot of misunderstanding in our family. And that went back, you know, on my mom's and dad's sides before them too. Because they inherited that and learned that way of behavior, that money is something you fight about. So I realized from a young age that I had a lot of reservations about being in this world. I knew I was different. I knew that I would hear things and feel things that people didn't. because of the couple times that I did mention it and people looked at me like I had 3 heads. So then I shut my mouth. I didn't talk to anybody about the things that I would hear or see or feel in terms of not with my regular 5 senses, right? And I knew that I was a different person living in a world that didn't feel right to me. And I realized from an early age that a lot of the things that people would focus on and talk about, it felt small or petty to me. One of those things were money. And money to me at a very young age, I developed this idea that money was part of a world that felt small and petty to me. And I also wanted to reject it because it was something that people would fight about. And I still am, but as a child, I was extremely sensitive. And anything, I don't care what it was, if it caused anger or upset between 2 people enough so that they would argue or hate each other or yell or scream, I would cringe at that when I was a little kid. And so I'm like, money, okay, money. I reject that. It's part of a small world that I don't feel part of. I feel bigger than this world. And I'm not saying this to be cocky or anything. These are my opinions that I formed, the things that I thought about when I was a really little kid. I was probably like 6 years old, 7 years old, maybe. And so from a very early age, I learned to reject money. Not because I thought I was unworthy of it, but because it was small and insignificant and just caused problems. And when I realized this, lying in bed, and my guides came in, they kind of swooped in, and it just felt like a very comforting feeling. It's like, okay, so now you know this. Now you know this. What are you going to do about it? Now that this is fully up in the light and you can see it for what it is, how are you going to change this? And they're like, hello, what tools do you have at your disposal? What do you use all the time? Timeline collapsing statements, activating timeline potentials, etc. So they helped me walk through a process of healing that timeline where I was at that inception of rejecting money, literally pushing it away from me. Not a sense of unworthiness, but I felt like maybe it wasn't worthy of me. How crazy is that? Does that resonate with anyone else here? And I'm not saying this to put myself on some pedestal or anything like that. Though this was a feeling that I had from a very young age that, money is something to be feared because it kept you in a small world. And it made everything kind of close in on you. And I had a very strong sense of expansiveness when I was a little kid. And anything that made me feel small, I rejected it. I rejected it. That's part of a world and part of these worldly structures that I really don't want to be a part of because I don't really feel part of this world. So if you don't really feel part of this world, you're going to reject the structures that make up this world. Yes? Do you see the parallels there? So I went back in and I collapsed the timeline where I created that belief for myself, where I kind of downloaded that belief that money is petty and small, something to be feared, something to push away, something to reject, because it was a small thing that kept you in a small world. Okay, so that was a big piece of the puzzle for me. And a lot of things shifted after I cleared that. But then I did something that took it a little bit further. And I activated the highest timeline potential that exists where, because there is just like there is an expression of you that's maybe exploring lack right now, there is also an expression of you, a fragment of your consciousness, because we live in a universe of polarity. To everything, there is an equal and opposite energy. So if there is a you exploring a timeline, and it might happen to be your now dominant timeline, the one that you're in, the one you have the most focus on. If you're exploring that lack timeline now, there is another timeline that another fragment of your consciousness is exploring, where you're wealthy and you have a healthy relationship with money. Do you guys get that? Because that's the polarity of the universe that we live in. And so you can, once you collapse, and you want to learn the lesson, you don't want to just collapse something and say, unless you've explored it enough and you're just done with it, and you're still in a timeline from habituation, because a lot of people who stay in timelines just out of habituation, just out of conditioning, they've already learned the lesson of staying in that timeline, they've already downloaded and completed that karmic lesson, etc. But they're still in that timeline because, hey, this is where all my friends are, and this is where all the familiarity and comfortability is in my life, okay? So if you're in that place, you can just go ahead and collapse the timeline. But if there's a piece that you need to integrate there, meaning that's a fragment of you that fractured off from the part of you that's healed and whole, so that you could explore some contrast to get yourself back to healed and whole, then you need to find that nugget. And for me, that nugget was, I rejected it because not that I thought that I wasn't worthy of money, but I thought that money wasn't worthy of me. And so I healed that. I healed my relationship where I thought money was small and insignificant and not important. I mean, if you tell anybody that they're not significant or important, you're going to cause a rift there, yeah? Money is just energy. Money is the same thing. So here I was telling the energy of money, you don't matter. You think somebody wants to show up in your life? Something wants to show up in your life if you're constantly telling it? It doesn't matter? No, right? Is the quick answer on that. Are you guys feeling me? So when I got that nugget, and I said, okay, I've downloaded and completed this lesson now. I fully collapsed this timeline, but I'm going to take the energetic carryover potential of this timeline that I was funding, because energy is energy, and energy can either be created or destroyed. It just moves and changes and shifts form. So I took that energetic carryover potential and I used it to fund the dominant timeline where I'm already exploring wealth, where I'm already exploring financial independence, where I'm already exploring being flush in my bank account. Do you guys get this? Is this making sense? Does this resonate for anyone else who feels like money is a small thing that's part of a small world? And we're spiritual, we don't need it, right? There's nothing that says you can't be spiritual and be fully aligned with Source and be exploring a human timeline where you are in alignment with prosperity. Those things are not mutually exclusive. We just think that they are, okay? And we've had a lot of misleading ideas about being spiritual or religious and having money, haven't we? It's so drilled into us, you know, culturally and in a lot of different cultures on this planet. That doesn't make it true. You know, we're exploring and excavating a lot of false timelines, a lot of false narratives that are falling away because we just stopped believing in them because we know they're horseshit. Pardon my French. Didn't realize I had this belief, right? Okay, so great. That's one example. The other example, you know, the roles that people play, that we learn their roles from an early age. We learn what mom does. We learn what dad does. We learn what grandpa does. We learn what grandma does, right? What our teachers do, what our friends do. There are a lot of widespread beliefs that rich people are all corrupt, right? And they're not godlike, because they're ripping everybody off, right? How is that godlike, right? These are the things that we've downloaded as collective beliefs that are not true. And yet we've created a narrative of our story with money around that. Time to stop that. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory on this here, but brevity is not my thing, but I don't want to make this too long-winded, but I want to help you understand how I formed this kind of trauma for myself. So when I was born, I was an Irish twin. Do you guys know what an Irish twin is? An Irish twin is when two siblings are born within the same calendar year. So my brother was born January 27th, 1971, and I came along January 19th, 1972. I was not expected, okay? So you can already see like some inherited trauma there. I was not expected. I don't want to say I wasn't wanted, but I certainly was not expected. And I was not expected for another reason. When my brother was born, he had a cleft palate and a cleft lip. So for the first year and a half, maybe even closer to 2 years of his infant life, he had to be fed through a tube. He had to be watched very carefully so he didn't choke on food. And of course, you know, it was my parents' firstborn child. So they wanted to, of course, make sure that he was very well taken care of. And my family, you know, I don't come from money. My parents were both working. You know, I was a latchkey kid through my through my teen years, but starting from the time I was basically like 8 years old. And when my brother came along, or when I came along after everything was happening with my brother, and my parents were so vigilant in making sure that he was okay, I got passed out to whoever could take care of me. Aunts, uncles, grandparents. You know, I wasn't home a lot. And here I was, this infant coming into the world and just being passed along to strangers all the time. So I didn't really bond, okay? And I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house. And both of my grandmothers were emotionally unavailable in two different ways. My father's mother, she's the matriarch of the family, very strong-willed woman, extremely opinionated, highly religious, but in such a way where she did Meals on Wheels and she helped prisoners to read and she did all this stuff, but she was highly judgmental of her own family, and very highly judgmental of me as I got older and realized that I had a mouth and I used it often and usually to my own detriment. And we clashed a lot. And she was kind of resentful because she was going through something difficult with my grandfather at the time, so she didn't like taking me on as a burden to her. And I mentioned before, I was a sensitive kid, so I took this in. I felt it. You know, I felt that I was a burden. My other grandmother, my mom's mother, she was emotionally unavailable because she was a manic depressive. And she, throughout her life, went through a spiral of depression, starting from the time that her oldest son, my Uncle Bob, who I never knew because he died when he was 20 years old, he was hit on a lonely country road riding his bike at home from a friend's house. He was 20 years old. He was the golden boy of the family. He was the oldest son. He was attractive. He was smart. Everyone loved him. And he was the apple of my grandmother's eye. And when he died, when he was killed tragically, she was completely withdrawn, emotionally unavailable for her own family, for herself, and for anyone else. I think she spoke 4 words to me the whole time I knew her. She was not there. She was just a shell of a person. I blame no one in this. I want to make this very clear. I've made my peace with these souls beyond the grave. We have a relationship now, even though they are not incarnate. That doesn't mean you still can't change or develop even a relationship with that soul's expression or fragment, because they are corded to you in a way, especially through the DNA. And we do some of that in ancestral timeline healing in my Timelines course. But I had 2 grandmothers that were emotionally unavailable to me. And these are the women that I spent the first 3 to 4 years of my life with, really. I wasn't home very much at all when my brother was being cared for. Because even when he was old enough to have surgery, then there was another, caregiving level that was focused on my brother, and I was still getting passed around. So I didn't bond to people. There was no breastfeeding, so I didn't bond in that way either. I was taught to kind of get used to temporary situations, which is a weird dichotomy, to get used to something temporary, because I was being shoved around all the time and all that. And I learned from a very young age not to rely on anybody, not to trust anybody, to think that all things were temporary, to believe that love was conditional, and a whole other host of things. And as a result, this created a template in my life where I became incredibly independent. And some of you might be saying, Kathryn, oh, that's great, good for you. Being highly independent and not relying on anyone else and refusing to rely on anyone else because there's a deeper issue there of trust and a belief that impermanence, and I know our whole 3D realm of illusion is impermanent, but I'm talking about in terms of feeling cared for and safe and stable and grounded, those things that we need to develop a healthy root chakra, those things were not there for me. And so being highly vigilantly dependent is actually a trauma response. Do you guys get that? Do you feel that? Can anyone relate or resonate with that? And so that kind of evolved into me being a latchkey kid because both my parents had to work. So I'd come home from school. We had a babysitter, but she was terrible. She was awful. And my brother and I, we used to torment this poor lady. Oh my God. She quit after, I think, like 8 months because we just used to, when my brother and I would gang up on somebody, forget about it. They were just, yeah, it was terrible. I feel so bad for this lady. So I'm getting some responses here. Yep, totally. Yes, I totally relate. I definitely relate. Okay. Yeah, and again, I'm not blaming anyone because I've done a lot of healing around this. And I know that all these people were just dealing with their own shit, okay? And when you're in that moment, you're not really thinking about the long-term effects this might have on someone or whatever, you know? So I don't blame anybody. I have no resentment. I'm just stating to you how this got there. This hypervigilant sense that carried on throughout my life. I'm the only one I can rely on, no matter what. I don't need anybody. I don't need anybody. And I'll just go it alone. And if someone, wants to come along with me, great, but I actually prefer to be alone. And I created a template for my whole life around that. For years, I had a very, very prickly demeanor, as you can probably imagine. I never thought that, and I've always been an independent thinker, but I think that's incidental to the hypervigilant independence that I feel in my life, where I don't need anybody, because that's the trauma response. I don't, just as my nature, I don't really like convention anyway. I like to think outside of the box. I think differently. I'm a visionary. I feel differently. I think differently. I do things differently. Again, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal here. Being an independent free thinker is different than being hyper-vigilantly independent, where you feel like I don't need anybody. Because we do need people. We are born into this human existence to be part of a human family. And then within that, to have our own tribes and communities and families. Right? We do need each other. We absolutely need each other. And I have defied convention in a lot of ways. Like, I never thought I was going to get married. I knew I was never going to have kids. That never resonated for me at all. I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do in this lifetime. But probably the most conventional thing I've ever done was get married. And it was only because, I had kissed a lot of frogs before I found my prince. And based on all the frogs that I had kissed, they were not marrying material. But when I found Jimmy, it was clear. That was my soulmate, not a twin flame. I don't like that whole idea of the twin flame, and I think it's kind of false. That's just me. He's my soulmate. And I know we've been together for a lot of lifetimes, playing different roles with each other. I digress. But this is something that I had to heal through inner child healing. And when I had done inner child healing on this before, but when I brought the timeline healing nuance to this, those last layers that were ready to be brought up for review and investigation and then clearing and purification, it felt like I was given a new lease on life. It felt like I was open to love in a way that I hadn't been before. It felt like I was free to love freely. Does that make sense? I've heard that the twin flame narrative is highly misunderstood from a few places. Yes. Yeah, there's a little bit of falseness to it. And there's false ascension can be tricky, and it can work through a lot of different themes and narratives and constructs. And I feel that's one that gets worked over by false ascension software and false ascension agents. And it just feels off. And usually at this point in my life, I go with, does it feel off? Yep. Okay. Discard it. So maybe from what I'm saying here, this gives you some sort of clue to maybe something that you're working on. I've given you 2 examples here. Finances, obviously. That's something that we can bring in things from a very early age and not even know that we have them there. So let's get to your investigative journey here. I've talked enough about mine, and that felt good to get that out on Front Street, but a little unnerving at the same time. But I really hope that helped you guys, because I got the feeling that needed to be shared, because there were more than a few of you that need to hear it. And I'm sure when I put this up on YouTube, I'll probably get some responses as well. But let's focus on your investigative journey here. So are you aware of something, and it could be just below the surface here, that maybe you've been working on, you've been doing some shadow work on in your life, and it just feels like it's in the process of, it's like it's always healing, but it's never healed. And maybe you've been working on something, but it's like, it doesn't feel whole yet. Like it doesn't feel like I've, that part of me that fragmented, I've called it fully back. Is there some part of you that's still navigating through some level of scarcity or lack? Or maybe you're very aware of a trauma that happened to you early on in life. This could have been, abusive on some level, physical, mental, verbal. Or you were told, you're never going to amount to anything. Or, someone told you at an early age. I had a really interesting revelation when I was doing some inner child timeline healing about art and being in art class and having a frustrated art teacher who couldn't be an artist in her own right. So those who can't do, teach. It's not true all the time. But this was one of those ladies, and she completely failed me in her class because she didn't like, we were doing kiln work, we were doing pottery, and we were asked to make food. And the food that I made was like a purple hamburger with a green bun and on a plate that just looked like a cloud. And I thought it was really cool. And she hated it, and she failed me because it was not the assignment. It was art class, for God's sake. And I didn't realize that I had held that with me as a failure, right? And so maybe there's something that you took on as feeling like when you were a little kid, some adult who was dealing with their own shit and not very well, projected their shit onto you, that you were a failure in some way. It could have been a parent, it could have been a peer, a teacher. I mean, there's all kinds of angles that you can come at this with. But I invite you guys to pick something here. And you wouldn't have been drawn here if there wasn't something within you that was crying out for release and purification, right? Because that's the kind of symmetry we live in this world. We tend to have source show up right when we need it. Donna says, similar backgrounds. Love seems elusive, receiving love is challenging. Yes. Oh my God. Receiving love is challenging. Just ask my husband. Sometimes I can just be prickly because I'm habituated to that, and that's just my conditioning. That if I'm trying to figure something out and I'm really in the thick of something, it is not my normal response to ask for help. I'm conditioned to, I'll figure it out. I don't need you. That's a trauma response. That's not you being really strong. For me, in that situation, me being really strong is going into that vulnerability and saying, you know what? I need some help. I can't do this. And I am not one to normally say that, but I'm getting better. Because when you do this collapsing and you bring in the carryover potential into the now dominant timeline that you're in, or most of your focus or attention is in, then you have to follow it up with the behaviors that are in resonance with that. So that means I am getting into the habit, or I'm rehabituating myself, reconditioning myself, recreating my new normal of asking for help and not feeling like I always have to go it alone. I'm the only one that can do this. I have to be in charge. I have to lead the pack. I have to do this. That's trauma. That's trauma talking. That was a hard pill to swallow, but I'm glad I did. Because once I took that in, it was so freeing. It was so liberating. And now kind of the hard work is, following through and putting my money where my mouth is and doing these behaviors. I definitely relate to this. Thank you for sharing your journey. You're welcome. So again, guys, this is a really safe space. So I want to walk you through, and at the very beginning, those of you who jumped on later, I want to again reissue this disclaimer that if you're not ready to look at something here, you may want to opt out at this point and come back to this video another time, okay? Or go ahead and check out the Healing the Inner Child with Mother Creatrix, because that's very soft, it's very loving energy, it's free, it's in my member vault. Maybe go and do that first and then come to this one. But if you feel like you want to go balls to the wall here, pardon my French, and go all in and do this, I want to tell you, you're in a safe space. I take your energy very, very seriously. Not everyone in Facebook land does this, but I want you to know that you're in a safe space here, and I will guide you and lead you through this process and ground you after, okay? So for those of you who want to continue, great. Those of you who want to opt out, here's your opportunity. All right. So I would recommend getting a big sip of water, finding the balance of figuring things out for the joy of it versus recognizing when it becomes frustrating and a place where we would do well to reach out for help. That's super interesting and necessary for me. Oh, wow. That's big, Courtney. Thank you for sharing that. That's big. Yeah. It's big stuff. But it's because of this bigness that it's so necessary to clean and purify it, right? And make peace with it, right? And making peace with all the people involved. And doing some ho'oponopono around it too is just that extra little measure that gives this that much more oomph. Ho'oponopono is the forgiveness prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And if you're going to be with us here on the rest of this journey here today, you may want to throw that in a couple times today, because it's a declaration, it's a prayer. It is working, it's also working through kind of the layers in 4D, where we have feelings kind of marinating in the energetic soup that aren't fully cleansed. The Ho'oponopono, just a little side note here, because 4D is all about feelings and it filters into our reality here in 3D. And if we have a lot of feelings that are attached to what we're about to clear, sometimes they're just swimming in that energetic soup because they've been fragmented from us for so long. Ho'oponopono, the forgiveness prayer, acts like a magnet and pulls those feelings down when you're clearing those fragments of self through collapsing timelines and then activating the carryover potential in the timeline you want to invest in. It helps to clear up a lot of unclean, unpurified energy in 4D. Ho'oponopono magnetizes that. It's pretty cool that way. So get your water, have a nice big sip. Maybe you want to make sure you're not going to be disturbed for the next 20 minutes or so. And I have this statement in here if you want to scroll through the comments, but I also created an individual post in Global Acceleration of Ascension of the collapsing timeline statement that we're going to use here so that you have it written down. And, feel free to riff on this in your own way, but I'm going to do it this way because it covers a lot of bases. If you want to create it in your own words, please do so, but kind of try to hit all the highlights that I have in the phrasing of this statement, okay? So just go ahead and take a deep breath in and just relax your energy. Just take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just go ahead and do that again because it feels so good. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And feel your energy just kind of come down a little bit. And just relax. I want you to imagine just like a soothing ray of light, just a little golden shine of light, a little ray of light that goes from the top of the head and just kind of cascades down through the body and just kind of softens all the muscles and the joints, and the face and the jaw and the shoulders, the neck, down through the chest and the back. Just bringing this wave of relaxation all the way down through the body and just kind of bringing your energy down a little bit. Just bringing the heart rate down, relaxing the body from the muscles into the tissues, right down to the cellular level. Just bring this all the way down to the feet. And then bring this energy down and out through the feet. Just naturally send it flowing down through all the earthly layers of dirt and rock and crystal. Just let it gently settle into the core of Terra. Now I want you to call in your God self. This is the highest vantage point of you, the objective observer of self, the highest level of discernment, and just call in God self, 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 God self. And just feel that gentle, very subtle shift. And now call in all the fragments, all the expressions of you that are currently exploring other timelines, lifetimes, realities, dimensions, space. Call in all of these expressions of you. Call them in home in this now moment. And I want you to imagine a sphere of very bright, luminous light. A sphere or a halo of light just above the top of your head. This is the 12D crystalline diamond light. Highly purifying. Resonates at an extremely high frequency. And just imagine gently allowing this to come down through your physical being, through your aura, your etheric self, your astral self, and the physical self. Just let it cascade down through all of the fields. We're going to do something different here than I usually do. We're going to ask to bring down and clear and send down into the earth for transmutation and purifying anything that we don't need to work on right now. And we ask that the 12D crystalline diamond light leave behind and leave illuminated what is highest and best for us to review, explore, investigate, and purify right now. Just simply put this intention out and know and trust and surrender to this happening. Anything else that we don't need, we allow this light to gently usher it down and out through the body, through all the layers of the earth, and down into the core of Terra, leaving behind that which is foremost, front and center in our life right now, that is ready to be excavated, cleared, purified, reviewed, investigated, and known on a conscious level. So essentially, we may be bringing things up here to be illuminated that are currently residing in our unconscious or subconscious. And just gently allow that. You don't have to force anything. Just, even if you're not feeling anything in the moment or knowing anything in the moment, just be in the flow of this exercise, be in the flow of this guided practice, and know that you'll know it when you need to know it. You don't have to force anything here, because then that puts you in ego. And we don't need to be there. The ego really has no domain or purview here. It doesn't know what it's doing here. So we can leave that part out for the moment. Working with the God self here. We ask to call to mind any timeline representing a trajectory in our life that has maybe brought us into this now dominant timeline, but originated at the time when we were a tiny human, a small child trying to figure out the nature of this world, creating our worldview based on the information we were just in a hypnotic state downloading, taking on as truth, taking on as our perception of the world, learning our place in the world is what I'm hearing. Kind of solidifying our place in the world by what we were learning or downloading. Simply by the people that we were surrounded by the most. We created this worldview, this perception of reality, and ultimately our personal identity. But it may not have been formed in a place of truth, or even in a place that was in alignment with pure source consciousness. We ask to have that fully revealed to us now. Let it form as a vision, as a feeling, a memory. But if it's a memory or a vision, we ask that it form in the essence of review rather than reliving any trauma or anywhere we've have created or had created fragmentation of self, a fracturing of our soul being. We don't need to relive that. We're in our God self objective observer vantage point, so we can simply review without being in the emotional trauma of it that we experienced at the time. Maybe you have a person or persons coming to mind, an event, a place in time, knowing if you were indoors or outdoors. If there's a sound that cues you into this time, this timeline, let that be known. Maybe it's even a smell, a taste. Let these all be a breadcrumb trail leading us to this nugget of wisdom that we're meant to uncover so that we can reclaim this part of self here. We ask this in the highest level of spirit. Thank you. And just let this expand. And as you let this expand, notice how your feelings expand along with this, of how they resonate for you today. Not necessarily how it resonated for you at the time. Remember, we are not reliving the trauma, but rather we are exploring where this feeling has imprinted itself on us today in our now dominant timeline, and where, in addition, this may be leading us away from source, moving us out of alignment with pure source consciousness, fragmenting us further from source. And just get a sense of this here. And as you do, and you let this unfold and even expand a little bit more, as my sovereign God self, you can just say this quietly to yourself or out loud, doesn't matter. As my sovereign God self, I declare that all open, alternate, and parallel realities and timelines where I am exploring this contrast to my highest good and the highest good of all are collapsed. I ask that any unintegrated part of this lesson now be brought up in full clarity for my review, for my investigation, and ultimately for purification. Take a deep breath here. This bit of information, it may not come to you in real time. That's okay. Trust that the energy and the momentum behind the energy of this information that you're calling forth is gaining momentum in fields or levels of dimension that maybe you don't have access to right now. It takes a long time for things to show up in density. And information coming to us from the higher dimensions has to travel a ways, and there is a buffer time in between receiving what is already being transmitted in higher dimensions in your 3D reality now. So just take heart and surrender to the fact that this information will come. It is coming. And in a way, it is already here. And you may even want to say here, especially if this is a highly emotionally charged thing, I no longer have resistance to knowing this bit of wisdom about myself. I no longer have this resistance to remembering who I am, who I really am. And taking this a little bit further, I ask that the energy potential of this timeline or these timelines be carried over and used to fund and activate my highest now dominant timeline, which is aligned with my most desirable outcomes of you fill in the blank. Giving and receiving unconditional love, knowing financial independence, moving past feeling unworthy, feeling like a failure, not knowing my purpose, or I should say, knowing my purpose. We're filling this in the positive, not the negative. These most desirable outcomes of fill in the blank that are in alignment with pure source consciousness. And so it is. Thank you. And if you're visual, or you want to take this a little bit deeper, you can imagine merging the now gained wisdom of this timeline. Even if you don't have conscious awareness of what this wisdom is now, that's okay. Imagine this timeline that you've collapsed the energetic potential of. Imagine the energetic carryover potential of this with the wisdom now intact, merging. Just imagine like two streams or conveyances of energy merging into each other. So now in your now dominant timeline, you're taking on this wisdom. This fragment has been called home. In this thing and in this timeline, in this healing, you are healed and whole. And so it is. Just take a deep breath in and love yourself in this moment for having the courage to do this work. Love yourself for having the acceptance of accepting that this is where you have been. And it is not necessarily been in alignment with you as a highest expression of pure source consciousness, but that's okay. Because in the love you have for yourself, you decided to reclaim that now. And you can only do that if you have love for yourself. That's where real courage comes from. Just take another deep breath in. And just focus on any kind of colors that you're seeing or any kind of feelings. If you feel highly supported or lifted up, some people feel like they're being held aloft or kind of floaty after this. That's totally normal. Or maybe you're seeing colors. Connect with the feeling of this reclaiming and regeneration of self. Connect with anything visually that you're taking in. And just take that into your heart space. Take that in. Breathe it in. as the beautiful pure source mana that it is. Food for your soul, in other words. That should feel good. And now I want you to call back anywhere you feel you sent your energy out into time, space, realities, dimensions. I want you to consciously call all those pieces back. Call in this integrated timeline now. Call it into your heart. On the inhale, imagine this all coming back into the heart space. And take another deep breath in and imagine pulling that sphere of 12D diamond light down through the body as you inhale. And as you exhale, exhaling it out through the feet and sending it all the way down through all the layers of earth, through dirt and rock and crystal, asking that this be fully grounded and integrated into your 3D physical being. And we ask that in the name of the reclaimed soul of Terra. Just send that all down to the heart of Mama Earth. And when this feels complete, you can just say, I'm grounded, I'm grounded, I'm grounded. Take a deep breath in and out, and go ahead and open your eyes. And then when you're ready, go ahead and tell me how that felt for you. And let me know if you feel like you're back and you're grounded, and if anybody needs maybe additional grounding, or if something feels like it didn't integrate here, you go ahead and ask me a question here. Again, you're in a safe space. This is a safe community to share. Go ahead and write that in the comments if you need some additional help. So I did put it in the comments, the link to the Inner Child Timeline Healing, Inner Child Healing with Mother Creatrix. So go ahead and check that out. It's free if you feel like you want to ground this a little bit more and really soothe your soul and your spirit. This is an absolutely wonderful inner child healing that takes this a little bit further. Does it feel like there was an integration here? Does it feel like something shifted, that something opened up? And if you want to use this, again, you know, this is, you have the statement, you can modify it to make it sound like your own words a little bit more. You can listen to the way I worded it again, because it was a little bit different here in the video. But you're really only limited by your own imagination in terms of how you want to use this. The place that really matters most is being in a space where you can accept that there is this place in you that you've been out of alignment, and you can accept that it maybe came in at a very young age, and you can accept that it was no one's fault, right? There's no one to blame here. This is a piece of the puzzle that brings you back into that remembrance of who you are before you fractured or fragmented, okay? That's what any healing is. And that's why we're always in the process of it. Because think of it this way, we are always becoming more and more and more of our infinite selves. We're always gaining more expressions of that. We're gaining a higher evolution of that all the time. So there's always going to be pieces to heal and integrate to help move us back into that remembrance or into that ever-evolving place of alignment with Source. Yes, multiple flashes from my childhood and teenage years came up. Ooh, okay. If your teenage years were anything like mine, they were certainly wild. Wonderful. I was healing hurt during this session. An answer was not yet revealed to me, but I saw a light appear from my heart space as we were closing. Thank you. Be open to what comes in during dream time as well, Tiffany and everyone else here who feel like maybe something didn't come in real time. Maybe you got a piece of that or a sense of that. That's okay. You know, that's your breadcrumb. But be open to the rest of the trail of breadcrumbs revealing themselves. This may come in times where you're doing meditation. This may come in during dream time. If you have a dream journal, I do. I keep one by my bed because my dreams are nuts. But they always have interesting bits of information for me on what I'm working on and what I'm asking Spirit to help me with. So be open to that. Yes, I actually have been going through this before this call. Donna says acceptance. Yes. So I really hope this was helpful for you all, and that you came away from this with a sense of greater knowing of yourself. Every time I do inner child timeline healing, I come away with a greater knowing of myself, and that always feels good. And that's the thing that keeps me doing this work, because yes, the healing part and being in the thick of it, it's not that pretty, and sometimes it can be painful, and no one likes to feel vulnerable. No one likes to feel raw and exposed. But the other side of that is always and ever having more wisdom about who you really are. And you can't put a price on that. You can't. And the only way to get there is through, kind of putting yourself through that place of, all right, I'm gonna see some shit here, but I'm okay with it. Because I know on the other side of it, I'm gonna know more about who I am. I'm going to be equipped with more wisdom of self. And when we know ourselves more, we love ourselves more. That's the way it goes. Okay? And I'm happy to know you more and love you more. I can't wait till our summit is happening this Friday. Yay! Invite your peeps. Bring them on in to this intentional community. But bring people who are going to be engaged, because we don't want to just invite people willy-nilly who don't really want to be here or aren't going to show up or don't even like this kind of stuff. Invite people who are going to be engaged. And maybe, when you look at the calendar of events, you see what people are posting as topics. You're like, I know so-and-so they need to come to this. Invite them in. This is an incredible free event. I have said before, and I'll say it again, when we have the summit, I have paid for conferences and conventions that I didn't come away with the kind of information and energy that this free summit provides. So Olivia says, Kathryn, I was thinking about this since yesterday, smelling my first day at school in the cafeteria, different foods, hot dogs and chips. I didn't like that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can still smell that smell. And another smell is when I would have a lunchbox and my thermos would have milk in it, and then everything in my lunchbox, because it was usually a plastic, but sometimes a metal lunchbox, it would smell like that kind of stale milk. Does anyone else have that remembrance? And then, I'd flash to the different events that would happen in the school cafeteria when I was in elementary school. Funny stuff. Yeah, olfactory memories is a big, it's a big lead for me. When I smell something, I just flash back to a place in time usually. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for those of you who were here and played live. You're amazing. I love you. Thank you so much. So much. Donna says yes. And I will talk to you guys soon. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you on Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, the beginning and the kickoff of the Global Acceleration of Ascension Free Virtual Summit. Mwah. Love and peace, everybody.